good? It's your host, Marcus Norman of Gentleman Style Podcast Show. And today we are diving deep. This is by far my favorite subject to talk about. This man we have come into the Gentleman Style Podcast stage is a veteran in the industry, the grand poobah of ATM business and investing. This man, in my opinion, when you see this man, the wisdom will droop off of his head. He has phenomenal podcast, a phenomenal YouTube channel. His company, pdqmei.com, is helping you, me, for years, decades, get into the ATM business, invest in the ATM business, and he teaches and coaches all across the United States how to get started for every budget. I feel every budget. So, but he's not cheap, but it's worth the investment. I have Mr. Philip Webb coming to the Gentleman Style Podcast stage to help us learn how to get started in the ATM business. He's a returning guest. Help me welcome Mr. Philip Webb. How are you, sir? Welcome back to the Gentleman Style Podcast Show.
Mr. Norman, I tell you, it's an honor and pleasure to be here today. I've been watching your whole career. You have amazing topics. I follow a lot of it. Some of it's a little racy, I guess you want to say, with some women. I don't know. I kind of cringe on some of that, but yeah, risque. But hey, I enjoy everything. You make a guy think about what you say and what's being said out there. So, but thank you very much. It's an honor and pleasure to be here in front of you and all your guests. So thank you very much. I appreciate you, sir.
I appreciate you, Mr. Webb, and thank you for watching my growth from starting with one ATM and the podcast and helping and give back, right? I think what you do is absolutely tremendous, and you're the only expert I see in the field. And when I first got started, everybody claimed to be the expert in this industry, but you stood the test of time. You were consistent. You were always willing to give. You were always helpful. You were always insightful, and no fluff, right? There was no fluff. There was no, hey, I'm gonna waste your time for 30 minutes, right? It was always a service. You were always a public servant when it came to how to get started. And there's too many scammers out there. So I appreciate you for what you do, which is why I've always asked you and invited you back onto the show, because what you do is necessary and mandatory for what we need to survive. And so I want to start with the curveball question for those in the audience who may not know you, which I find impossible, but who haven't heard of you yet. What made you get started in the ATM business? What inspired you to first enter the ATM industry years ago? I won't age this gentleman, but what got you started in the business, and what was the landscape like back then that stuck out to you?
All right. So I got started in the business about 25 years ago. I was a music and games operator, which meant we placed jukeboxes, pool tables, pinballs into bars and restaurants. And what happened is I walked into one of our locations and I was doing my collection. And what we did is the owner's office was in the basement of the bar. And so I did my collection. I got everything together, sorted out the money. And then I went down, proceeded my way downstairs to what we call square up with the bar owner. And I noticed that there was an ATM in the corner of the bar. And I didn't really understand what that was about or what it was. But then I went down and I said to the owner, I said, look, here's your end of the collections. And I said, what is that over there in the corner? And he said, that's an ATM. And I said, it's an ATM. I thought that was just for banks. And he says, yeah, so did I. But a guy came in and said he had an ATM. He put it in my bar. And what we would do is it would dispense cash. It didn't cost me anything, Phil. And, the kids nowadays, I call them kids, but they were 20 somethings. They didn't have any cash, or they don't have enough of cash. So what happens is they run out of cash. Then they go down to the gas station, which was about a block away. And he says, then they get cash and come back. But sometimes they don't come back. Sometimes they go somewhere else. So I'm losing revenue. And he was a cash only bar. He didn't want to take credit cards. He was cash only the whole time. So he said this was an opportunity for me to have this ATM in there and keep the kids staying in the bar. And I said, well, why didn't you ever ask me to do put an ATM in here? He says, well, I didn't know you're in the ATM business. And I said, I'm not. But he says, well, he says, if you're not, then why are you mad at I didn't ask you? I said, well, I just thought you would ask me because of our relationship. He says, well, I'll tell you what. The guy came in, he put an ATM here. I didn't know about this. He said, but if you decide to get in an ATM business, then I didn't sign any kind of paperwork with him. I'll remove his ATM. I'll put your ATM in here and we can go from there. And I said, well, you know what? That's great. So it took me about a month to figure out, where do I get an ATM? How do I get an ATM? What's some of the procedures? And um, I found an ad in a magazine that had an ATM for sale. And I called them and I said, would you sell me an ATM? And they said, no, we only sell to what they referred to as a distributor. So I went and I talked to the distributor where we buy our music and games, like our pool tables from, and I convinced him to buy the ATM and then I'd buy it from him. And that's what he did. This whole process took about 3 months. And I had to convince him. And then I had to find what they call a processor, somebody who would process the transactions. The guy who was selling the ATM, he wouldn't do that. He said, you have to find somebody else. He referred me to somebody. We had to get signed up. It was a whole long process. But then when I got the ATM, I went back to my buddy and I said, look, I have the ATM. He says, okay, you can install it. And we did. We installed it, and he didn't get a commission on this deal. He didn't want a commission. He just wanted to have a cash supply for his customers. And I said, okay, so that's what we did. Back then it was on phone line. So we had to get a phone line installed at the bar to be direct just for the ATM. And that's how we did it. And we didn't make, I'll tell you what, it was a lot of effort back then. We didn't make a whole lot. It was my first ATM in this location.
And so that is significant. That is a huge journey, and thank you for sharing. Because you could have gave up, you could have quit, you could have tapped out, you could have gave up and said, you know what, this isn't for me. Clearly, it's not for me because all the obstacles were there, all the things that could have pushed you out of the business and discouraged you. But it sounds like your way in was you already had previous experience with pool tables, the gaming industry.
Yeah.
Right. The pool tables, any well, I don't know if they were called skill games, but any gambling, casinos type stuff in there?
No, you didn't have that back. No, that wasn't available back then. Right.
Absolutely. So the gaming industry, huge nuggets there.
Yeah.
And so how has things progressed to you in the ATM industry back then to modern day? Because some people believe the ATM business is dead with the invention of blockchain, contactless payments, options available, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency. How has the landscape changed? Is it still as profitable as it was back then?
Yeah, it's actually better in a lot of situations. So I mean, that's a 25-year journey. So
Yes, sir.
it did change. I mean, back then we had phone lines. The cost of the ATM was about $8,000 versus now, and it went down to about as low as $2,000. Now it's probably closer to 25 to 3,000 all in with different bells and whistles. But the ATM went from $8,000 down to, let's call it two. And then it was always phone lines. So one of our additional costs were we had to contract with the phone company to get a phone line. And that cost was about $40 a month. Every phone line, every ATM had its own dedicated phone line. We tried to get over and share phone lines, but then the bars would pick up or the locations would pick up or the gas stations. And then that caused us, the ATM, to not have as many transactions. Wireless came out maybe about 8, 9, 10 years ago. That was a big thing. We weren't on internet. We couldn't get to internet. You had to have a dedicated chain, but different processors started to do internet, what they call TCP/IP, and that allowed us to make that change to internet versus the phone line. And then some wireless providers came out and actually let us put it on wireless, which we call, it's actually cellular, but it changed that landscape. So those were big changes. It also allowed us. We were talking before the podcast about mobile events. So you couldn't run a mobile event really in a field, but now you could. So if you
That's a
had
long phone line.
right, because it was all dedicated phone lines, so you couldn't run an ATM in a carnival or a street festival or a street event or any kind of mobile event because you were in the middle of the field. There was no phone line that didn't give you that opportunity. Now you have those opportunities. It makes it easier to go into a location because you don't have to worry about. Here in Illinois, we had it was Illinois Bell, then they broke them up, and then they went to Meritech. But basically, the phone companies controlled. You had to wait sometimes a month for them to put a phone line in. There was a lot of waiting to get into the location. Pretty much right now, a location, you meet with an owner on a Monday, they could sign paperwork Monday afternoon, and we could have the ATM in there Tuesday. It's that fast that could be done. Back then, it would take 30 days because we were waiting for a lot of people to get through the whole process. So the game has made it. The game now is very fast to get into a location. You can earn money right away. But you said, how has the game changed? And those are all the things that made it positive. But some of the negatives are there are more, let's say, the credit cards of the world with Venmo and Stripe and PayPal that has taken some opportunity away too.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And even with that, and I appreciate that. Even with that, you have ATMs that can buy and sell cryptocurrency. I've seen them. Is that the case with you? And is that an option still today?
So there's two different types. There's what they call a BTM, which is a Bitcoin ATM. That allows you to buy and sell cryptocurrency on different platforms. That is a separate device, not the device that we use. It's a whole different business model. But there is a company out there there's two companies that allowed us to buy and sell cryptocurrency it's an add-on onto your ATM. So they have, let's call it an app that goes on top of your ATM. You can go to the ATM, select the app, and then buy and sell cryptocurrency. But it's not the cryptocurrency where you put cash in and you buy into the wallet. This allows you to go from your debit card and go into the wallet and then take money from your debit card right into your wallet and buy and sell cryptocurrency through a debit card.
So we're still innovating.
Yes.
It's an industry that's still innovating, still changing,
Yes.
and still adapting. And
Yes.
so still and you notice, y'all, right? It's something that has traditionally been cash, right? An industry that's predominantly been cash only has moved into and evolving to the 21st century. And so now that is something that you teach your students, right, Mr. Phil?
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely. So this is the rundown. This is modern day. This isn't, don't let the wisdom fool you, right? This man has seen it all, done it all, been through COVID-19, several, probably several recessions, right? And he's gotten all his students through it all the entire way through. Mr. Phil, Mr. Webb, I want to ask, what kind of mindset, because I know you've seen students that have obviously win at this business, but not all of them. There are some failures. So can you speak to what are the top traits of people who succeed in this business? What kind of qualities and traits should someone have to enter this business? And what traits that lead to burnout and someone giving up? I see it, right? I'm a part of the Facebook groups where they give up, right? They're selling off their entire portfolio. It's not making any money. It's not making the kind of money they want. What are the traits and qualities someone needs to get in, and what traits does someone need or has exuded that has caused them to fall out of this business?
So that I would say it's a loaded question, but here's what I would believe. And this sounds, I didn't have any. I wasn't in the military. Okay, so I don't have that military background where you go to boot camp, they break you down, and then they build you up the military way, whatever. And I have so much respect for all our armed forces who do that. So I don't have that, but what I did have is, and truth be told, is I like to golf. So I had an instructor who taught me how to play golf, and there was that mindset that, you know what, we're making constant adjustments. We're starting here, and we're going to make constant adjustments to get better and better in that sport. It's a tough sport. It's not easy to play the game. You get killed with weather. You get killed with your competitors. There's always something going to go against you. And, you do the best you can to try to get through the round. That's like with business for me is I'm constantly battling business, the environment, like you mentioned, COVID, or we sometimes we go through a recession. You're constantly battle. And in business, you have to be resilient. You have to be able to remake yourself every day, all the time, over and over again. If you don't have that, I want to say killer mentality, but that never give up mentality, then you're not going to succeed. You have to weather the storm. You're going to have good days and bad days. I know this is all cliche baloney, but it's the truth. You have to have some resiliency, and you have to keep pushing. And when things don't go your way, you have to figure out, well, why didn't they go in my way? And try to figure out, what do I got to do to make it better? If you could do that, and I don't care what it is, you'll be successful. It's not going to be right away. And you mentioned the other people in the lane or on the space. You can go, look at YouTube, and you're going to see a million get rich quick schemes, but they are the same. You have to work, or you're not going to be able to weather the storm. So you need to have that resiliency. If you got that, you never give up mentality, you'll be successful, not only in the ATM business, but whatever business or whatever you choose.
Absolutely. Love it. I want to share some truth here. I'm in the ATM business, right? Truth be told, and I remember a night. This is crazy. It was pretty late. I don't want to say like midnight hours, but it was like 9-10 o'clock ish, and I had got the ATM. I was programming it, setting it up, and for the life of me, I couldn't get the ATM door to open up. So I call Mr. Webb. And I said, he's not going to answer. He's a family man. He's a hardworking man, but he's a family man. He answers. He answers the phone. And I said, I sent him pictures. I sent him screenshots. We FaceTime. I show him my ATM, what model I had. Because another mistake I made is I bought different models, when the real trick of the trade is to have one model so you can always swap out parts. But that's a 202 level, right? But anyway, I call Mr. Webb, I send him the pictures, and he's like, hold on. And he puts me on hold. He calls me right back, and he's like, take this screw out right here. And I said, there's no screw. By golly, there's a screw holding the door shut, and it's preventing my cassette from sliding out. So I see the screw, and I take it out, and now my ATM functions. But that's not in the manual, right? That's not on YouTube. That's not in the books. That kind of wisdom that's where mentorship comes in. I want to try and get people out of the frame of mind of, oh, I could do it myself. When it comes down to it, a mentor is going to save you hours and thousands of dollars because they have that years of experience. You're going to shortcut so many problems, because I had an event. It was my first event and my last event. But I had an event that I had to deliver that ATM to. And if I couldn't get that cassette to come out, I would have had to cancel and not do the event. And so that's something I wanted to share with people when they sit there and they forego good quality mentorships. Right. I'm sorry. And I want to speak to what you said earlier with people on YouTube, right? There's a lot of people. You're going to find the get rich quick schemes. You're going to find the scammers. I'm sorry that you got scammed by someone else. This man is the real deal. This is the real deal, Holyfield type of giver that's going to help you win every single time and miss and avoid all the shortcuts. So I want to say that. Because again, wireless is profound. Like I said, I did my one event, Mr. Phil. And I've seen every kind of jerry rig when it comes to doing event. And I blew the mind of the event host because I was able to get my ATM in the middle of a cornfield, have signal, and the ATM process. And I've seen people put batteries in there in the ATM. I'm
Mhm.
not doing that. I need the event host. Can you help me understand how to do an event versus the traditional model of putting it in a business? What kind of things I have to overcome if I have local events that I want to cater to and get started in this business? Because some towns are more robust and more they have a bigger platform where they do carnivals almost, they're always celebrating something. What's the difference between a traditional business setup with my ATM versus
So
a
I can
carnival event?
so I can tell you, like you asked, the evolution of the business for me.
Yes, sir.
Um, there's certain things that I won't do. But like you said, hey, I see guys, oh, they're putting a battery set up, they're doing this, they're doing that. We have our formula that works, and I stay inside those parameters. This is what I require. I want a common source electricity. So every event we do, if it's in the middle of a field, what they do is they bring in generators to run the beer, to run the lights. I mean, there's a lot of times you'll see a field that there's nothing there, let's say park, and there's nothing there. They bring in generators, they're powered by diesel. They run what they call spider boxes, which is every so they have the tents for the beer and the food or whatever they're using, and they run electricity. That's a requirement for me. I need electricity. You don't have electricity, I'm not going to do your event. I'm not going to be put myself with a battery and it's going to work. Is it not? We designed a trailer for the purpose of converting propane electricity. We never used it. Thank God we never used it, because it might not have worked every time, and then it looks poorly against our company. So we need a common source of power. I need security, at least on the property during the event. We need something to chain the ATM to. If the security, if they have security 24 hours a day, that gives me a better sense of um, a better feeling that I'm not going to get my ATM in harm's way. And if they don't at night, then we take the money out. We have minimums of requirement. We have an ATM contract. That's something we didn't do in the beginning, which for a mobile event, I showed up. I used to just, people would call us and say, hey, we need a mobile, we need some ATMs at this day and this time. Okay, no problem. We showed up one time with a guy called me a month in advance, 2 months in advance, and says, hey, can you bring ATMs? Yeah, how many need? We need two ATMs. We brought the ATMs there, and we said, where do you want them? And the guy says, we already have the ATMs. So
What?
what are you talking about? I talked to, let's say, Charlie. Oh, well, Charlie's co-hosting with Jim, and then Charlie calls to Jim and just says, oh, well, yeah, we went with this company because Jim was in charge of that, and Charlie thought he was in charge of it. And so we showed up with the ATMs. Okay. So guess what we had to do? We had to leave. Now, that same thing that I just said happened last year to me. But the difference is I had a contract, and the guy who brought the ATMs, he didn't. Guess what he had to do? He took his ATMs out. So that exact same thing happened to me 10 years ago, but I had an agreement. So the guy who was running it, he had a co-partner, and they were talking to another company. They never signed anything. The other company showed up with three ATMs, and I showed up with our three ATMs, and I said, hey, I said, what do you want? And he says, well, we already have ATMs. So I went back and forth with the person in charge, and I said, um, well, what do you want me to do? He said, well, hold on, let me figure it out. Then he pushed back on me. He says, well, can't you share the space? I said, no, I can't share the space. I said, we had an agreement. This is what an agreement was. He said, yeah, we did. I said, our agreement says we're the only ones on property. How do you want to, he said, well, what do you want me to do? I said, tell them to take them out. And they did. They came out, and they took the ATMs out, and we stayed there. So that was one thing. That's another thing that we did. Um, those two, and I make sure that I can secure it to something. Uh, Make sure there's a telephone pole or a light pole or something that I can secure the ATM to. We also put I don't know, we call them a kiosk, but the ATM goes into something that protects it for the wind and the rain. So I do that too. And I position where it could be, if it's I try to put them in the shade.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you ATM's in a festival and the sun's beating on it, it'll make this ATM so hot that the screen will blank out. So we make sure that it's in the shade pretty much all day. And if it's not, we put a tent. There's a little sporting goods store. Well, it's not little, but I don't know, wherever we call it's Dick's Sporting Goods. To be honest with
Same.
you, I'm
Same.
plugging for them. But for $50, you could buy a little tent that if you went to a ball game or a tailgate party, you could set that up. It'll just provide shade. It's not really meant for weather. So if we get a big wind, it's not really going to protect yourself. But from the sun, it will. We strap the ATM down and we put the tent on there, keeps it out of the sun, and then we're fine. So
Absolutely.
those are the things that we do. When we also we have minimums on there. I put on there what like a drop off and pickup fee on there. Sometimes we use it, sometimes we don't. Depends on the venue. If we've done the venue for years and years, we know how much money we're going to make, we don't assign that, but it's on the agreement. And then we pay a lot of events commissions, some we do not. And if we do pay them a commission, so depends on when the event is, but on Tuesday, like today, we did 3 events this weekend. It was 4th of July weekend. They get their money. They get their money today and tomorrow. We put a daily transaction. They'll get it all deposit. We'll show them an ACH how much money they got. We'll give them a statement, and they're done. Tomorrow they'll be all done. They'll be all paid. There'll be everything. A lot of events that we did, they said, "Oh yeah, this company said they're going to give us a check. They never gave it to us. They never gave us a statement. We have no idea." We do it automatically. You set it up, so it's all done, and it's right away. So we automated that whole system, pretty much. So we do.
Absolutely. And I love that, and I love some strategy behind there, locking it down, securing the event. And have you? I've had bad experiences with partners and businesses.
Yep.
My experience was one partner was all for it,
Yep.
the other wasn't. In those scenarios, if both partners don't agree on the ATM, will you back out or will you still press forward? So my situation was the barbershop. It was a barbershop.
Okay.
It was a father and son deal. The son was the actual barber in the shop. The father was an engineer, mechanical engineer, who's paying for the shop, paying for the equipment, paying for the lights and all that stuff. So the father, in retrospect, was the owner of the business. The son is just a worker in the business, but he's the actual barber. And the father wanted the ATM. The son did not want the ATM. And he's the influence in the shop, right? It's my dad. I'm telling the other barbers who are cutting in here not to support this ATM. Should I have still went through with that deal or no? Because the father owns the shop.
So it depends. So here, the situation is, who's the decision maker? I always go with the decision maker. So the decision maker at the end of the day calls the shots. So I wouldn't put in, number one, if we back it up, I wouldn't put an ATM unless I had a signed agreement and B, a canceled check and a tax ID number. So I would need the decision maker, the person that can make that decision, to sign the agreement. If the father's the one that makes that decision, then he would sign the agreement. I wouldn't put an ATM in without the decision maker making that decision. So if the son, and sometimes you got to play, because sometimes they're playing, well, I want it, but really my father's the one that does it. Really, they don't want it. It just depends. You have to read the room. So sometimes it's the he says, she said stuff. So we got to figure out, is that truthful or not? Because I've been in that situation myself. And it's usually they don't want it, but they're going to blame the other one, because the one who's not there is the one that makes the decision and you can't get a hold of them. So I would ask to speak to the father, to try to see, is this baloney or is this truth? And then I would get the answer. But I wouldn't put an ATM without a signature whether it's the son or the father making that decision. I wouldn't do it.
That's fair. That's fair. Absolutely. Love it. Would you say the ATM business is recession proof?
Yes.
You
So
would.
yes, I would say the ATM business is recession proof, no problem. Um, the only thing I would say is it's well, where is ATM? It depends on is uh, what kind of location. If it's a cash only location, it's not going to make a difference. If they put in credit cards, that will take a toll on the location unless they got some reason why they need cash. So if you're in a dispensary, cannabis dispensary, pot shop, they can't take credit cards. So that's not going to matter. Um, a place where you mentioned gaming terminals. If they got gaming, they're still going to need access to cash. So those are the type of venues I 100% are recession proof. Um, Grocery stores, like when we did during COVID, grocery stores, convenience stores, they went all up through COVID. So we did real well during COVID from the initial 2020 when we did lockdowns. That wasn't good. But then when they started opening up and there's a lot of stimulus money, there was a lot of money pumped in the economy. We did really well with the ATMs business. In 2008, where you said our recession, we did real well. It wasn't the economy, but I was in I had a lot of bars and a lot of convenience stores and liquor stores. Man, maybe people were trying to drown their sorrow and they just went there. Maybe I was a benefactor of that. We also had grocery stores. So I didn't see that it went down for me during that time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have been fighting my entire life to get a casino.
Yes.
I said to myself, because Virginia, where I am at, has
Yeah.
a ton of casinos and gambling houses.
Hmm.
The small mom and pop gambling has ceased
Right.
due to the new infrastructure and the new casinos that have been built up and are coming.
Right.
Um, so I, for one, I see a casino is probably not recession proof, but gas stations. I had a gas station at one point. Owner owner got greedy and kicked me out of there. But
Okay.
I feel gas stations are recession proof. So if it can be recession proof. You heard it here first with
Yep.
Mr. Philip Webb on the Gentleman Style Podcast show. Um, if I gain a casino, Mr. Webb, you got any casinos, or is that
We have legalized gaming here in Illinois. So do I don't if you want to consider those a casino, yes. So every place in Illinois has what they call, if you have a liquor pouring establishment, which means you can pour liquor, you can play they play five or up to six gaming terminals that are legalized by the state inside of inside of those places. So yes, we have ATMs inside of those places. So if that's what you want to talk about, casino, yes, we do.
so lucky?
Yes.
So lucky. I miss I I miss my bar.
Yeah.
COVID destroyed the bar that I had, but he had four of those games. It
Hmm.
was beautiful. It was a beautiful, beautiful thing. I am conflicted because I'm a gentleman, um, but I know it's a cash cow, a
Yeah.
gentleman's club.
Yes.
How do I get around the moral compass of the business of putting my ATM in a gentleman's club?
You don't.
Because
You don't.
you you don't at all.
Well, that doesn't make sense. I mean, um, you got to do what you believe in, and whatever you want to call it, let's call it the creator, whether you're Catholic or Christian or Hindu or Muslim or however you are. You got to do what's right. And, I'm a God fearing man, so you got to do whatever's right for you. And if you have your set of principles, then don't get against the principles. It's money. It's money. I mean, um, I think I wouldn't go against whatever it is that you believe in. So if you believe that you don't want to go into gentlemen's clubs because of your moral compass, then don't go against that. It doesn't make sense to me. So I wouldn't I wouldn't do it. We uh, you got to stand on your principles, and that's all you got. You know, a friend of mine once said, "My word is my bond, and my bond is my word," and that's the way you got to live. You got to live that way. So I wouldn't go against any of your beliefs, because then you're not who you say you are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Are there any businesses you will not do business with as an ATM? Because you're the grand poobah, you're the top. So you get to
Yeah.
pick and choose. Are there businesses that you will not do business with? Um, what's a deal killer for you? What type of business or uh
They I the Well, when you take a gentleman's club, now I haven't ever done a gentleman's club. It wasn't something that I wanted to solicit. So it's not that I would like to say I made a hard stance, but I never had the opportunity. But if I had, there was let's call them massage parlors. If you want to know what that is, I wouldn't do it. I don't. I'm not. I would, if somebody came to me with that, I would turn that down. Um,
agreed.
that's
Agreed.
that's not for me. But I never had to make that, to be honest with you. I never had to make the decision with the gentlemen's clubs. I never had uh to make that decision. I don't I probably wouldn't take it, to be honest with you. But the massage parlors, 100% I turned that down.
Absolutely. It's too close to human trafficking for me.
Yeah, exactly.
It's too close to what I've heard and seen and heard from. I'm a military vet, y'all, and
Yeah.
again, we're dealing with 20 plus years of experience from Mr. Webb. So look at that, two great minds coming together on this. Mr. Webb, I'm going to talk about your favorite topic:
Uh-oh.
fraud,
Yes.
fraud, and scammers. And some people are scared to death to get into this business because of fraud in this industry. I know on a regular, consistent basis, I subscribe to several YouTube channels and podcasts, including yours. But the term fraud scares me to death. And so, how has fraud evolved in this industry, and how can new entrepreneurs protect themselves? That you would speak to that, because I feel like every day I'm getting the new email alert saying, or a notification saying, "Hey, there's a new skimmer. Make sure your software is up to date. Make sure your remote updates and patches are in place. Um, check on your location." How do you handle fraud in this business?
All right. So we were pretty much, if you can believe it, up until about 4 years ago, the ATM business that we are part of, with we call them lobby ATMs, were essentially hack proof. We didn't have any fraud at all in the industry. We always worried about the bank ATMs. We call them FI, that stands for financial institutions. Those were the ATMs that were getting breached as far as software or even hardware. We never got experience that. Then probably about 2 years ago, we started to see some, what we call some breaches. The software that the manufacturers were using, I would say, are susceptible. So what they had is they had RMS, which stands for remote monitoring system. You would buy a program from some of the manufacturers, and that would enable you to download software updates, or look at your ATMs and see, could you maybe restart your ATM, look at transactions, or pull what they call journals. And those systems got hacked. Now, the manufacturers um, would say that there was, because they were hacked, it wasn't their system. It was user operator challenges. In other words, I took that system, I put it on my server got hacked, and that's how they got into the ATMs. Or um, or I didn't reset my passwords to make them admin. I didn't take them off the admin password, or I didn't change them frequent enough, or I left different things. There was always a challenge with that. I don't, without getting sued, I don't necessarily believe all those, but that's what the manufacturers have said. Since then, they've put in some additional protocols into those management software, and we have changed the industry to since January of 2025. we've made some additional security heightened levels into the business. But if you were operating those systems, then you were susceptible. If you weren't operating those systems, then you weren't susceptible to fraud on your ATMs. Now, there are skimming devices or cloaking devices that some of the bad guys are putting into your ATMs. They could steal card numbers, but you're not liable for that. So you wouldn't. That would be the card industry would be liable. That Visa, MasterCard, and the other banks. So you're okay there. And as far as somebody stealing, trying to get into your ATM, again, we've added some additional protocols over the last year to make it very hard. But anything's open, I would say. But I believe these additional security measures have stopped any potential fraud. And if you don't operate what I said, the RMS system, remote monitoring system, by the manufacturers, then you'll be okay. Now, the processors, they have a remote monitoring system. You could see it, but you can't change anything. That'll give you the flexibility to manage your fleet of ATMs without putting you down the fraud path or being susceptible to any fraud.
Absolutely. And I want to point this out because this is significant. Mr. Webb, your company, you are a processor, correct?
We consider a ISO, which is an independent sales organization. What does that mean? Is now people will say an ISO and a processor are similar, and they get that terminology, I guess, mixed up. Yeah. So there is so you have a processor who takes the transactions and they process transactions, but they have to go through what we consider an ISO, which is us. We do is we contract with Visa, MasterCard, all the banks, NYSERS, Pulse, Discover. We contract with those banks through a bigger bank called a sponsor bank, and that gives us the ability to process transactions. Then what we do is we resell that, or we bring in agents like yourself to put us that you can do the same thing. We offer you the same services so you can process your transactions, but we're actually it's actually us who is doing the getting the transaction from your card holder through us to Visa, MasterCard through a processor.
Absolutely.
That makes sense. I know it's a little funky, but that's the way it does.
No, it's good. I like it. So again, wisdom, and he's an ISO. His company is an ISO, and so they have that higher level. They've negotiated the contracts and the rates with the big credit card product. If you guys have no idea what we're talking about, look at the back of your debit card and credit card. Right. Or anytime you walk up to ATM, the ATM at your local bank will have some stickers on the side, and they'll say Visa, MasterCard, Amex, China Express, something like that. And those are companies that pay as a processing, and it happens within a split second. When you put your card in, your transaction is running through one of those companies and being processed. And so it happens in a split second. You don't get to pick and choose. It automatically happens. And so Mr. Webb and his company is partnered and contracted with those to do the exact same thing with the sponsor bank and in conjunction on your behalf. So that is a win, in my opinion. I want to pick your brain for some metrics. What in your experience are the metrics that make a good ATM route or ATM location a successful one? Is it 5 transactions a day, 10 transactions, 100 transactions? What, in your opinion, makes a location a viable ATM location?
So any way you slice it, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get $250 a month my end. So it depends. Am I doing 100 transactions at $3, which is $300 and no commission to the location? Am I doing I have a $3 surcharge and I'm giving 50% to the location? So I'm trying to net my end $250. So however I get there, that would be what I would consider a successful transaction. Now, we do have locations that do a ton more. They do 1,000 transactions a month. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to navigate between that high and you want to at least have a threshold of $250. Now, a $250 ATM you're in will pay for itself in 12 months. So I'm trying to always get return on investment, ROI, of in a year's time for every location that we do. And then if we get a brand new ATM, those older locations will generate revenue to speed up the process, so I can essentially pay for that new ATM as we add ATMs to the route. Now, not every location is going to be a home run. So you're going to put an ATM, which you think might be a good location, or ATM into that good location. The environment changed, things change. The owner might tell you, hey, it's going to be a good location, or B, it's, and then they don't do what they say they're going to do. And then that changes the whole landscape. And then you have the ability, you know what, it didn't work out, pull your ATM out and put it into another location. You basically have a sense of you like have a piece of real estate that's going to generate you revenue, and you can move it around. When you buy a piece of real estate, it's going to stay there. With an ATM, you're getting a rental property that you can move around the board until you find the right location. That's what you're trying to do.
Absolutely. I feel like every business owner I talk to is say, "Oh, I have tons of people coming through here. It's gonna do well. I really need this ATM ASAP." I feel like every business owner is gonna tell you that. Are there any tips or strategies or tricks that you or hacks that you can share where it's like, listen, that's fluff? Because I've gotten caught in that, right? I've gotten caught in that where a gentleman, a location will be like, "Oh, I really need this ATM," and I ask them, "What's your traffic like?" And now I've gotten a little bit more advanced. I'll sit outside the business for a day or two, not the entire day, but I'll come by at different hours, different times to kind of see how many people go in and out of this door, out of this front door. Are you any tips like that or suggestions? Because I feel like every business is going to tell you that same thing.
So exactly what you said. So what I would do is I would go there. It depends on what kind of business it is. Is it a convenience store? Is it a gas station? Is it a restaurant? What is it? So every business has its pros and cons, but let's just say this. Let's say it's a convenience store. So it's a convenience store. You go in there, the guy wants the ATM. And so it's okay, fine. Let's look where we're going to put it. We find a good spot. I would find a spot that I would think would generate traffic. And then I'm going to go in there and different times of the day, and I'm going to evaluate, is there people coming in? And sit outside and say, well, how many people walked in and out? I might do that for a little while. Now, if you don't want to take that time, then you can always put it in and let it stand on its own 2 feet for a little while. But if you want to do more due diligence, then you do what you said. You would go and you would watch the people at different times of the day and different times of the week and see how many people went in and out of that store. And then, is there a need for cash? So what's the need? Convenience store need is based on foot traffic. If you're in a bar and they have gaming machines, that's a different one. Is there a business next to it that needs cash, or do they need cash? What if you're in a barber shop and the guys don't want to take Venmo or PayPal or whatever, they want to just take cash? Then there's a need. You got to figure out, is there a need for the cash, and what the hours of operation are. That's always another thing. Are they going to be open? Are they only open 2 days a week? Like I had a barber shop. The guy says, "Oh, I want an ATM," but he's appointment only. It's him and a friend. Well, I'm not putting my ATM in an appointment only barbershop. Doesn't make sense. I have to do volume. We make money on volume.
Absolutely.
So those are the things they do. And the other thing that you do is you built it in an agreement. So you tell the guy, okay, fine, here's what we'll do. I'll pay you, let's say this, I'll pay you a dollar transaction if it hits 100 transactions a month. If it doesn't, then I'm going to pay you a quarter. So the guy said, "Oh, it's going to." So, well, let's see what happens on the volume then. Then you tell me how great your store is. So I'll let the ATM commission be dictated by the volume. And the guy said, "Well, I need to make this." It's like, well, then we're going to have the volume. And, well, I need it. It's like, it doesn't make sense. If it doesn't do this, then I'm only going to pay you that. So absolutely. I put that in an agreement, but that's all negotiated up front.
You see that? This is 202 level. This is not 101. This is not a beginner course. This is advanced stuff you're getting from Mr. Philip Webb.
Well, at the end of the day, you have to be, when you're in this business, you got to be afraid to walk away from the deal, whatever the deal is, It's just, it reminds me. I've been married 20. It'll be 23 years, so it's a long time. But back when I was running around chasing girls, when and it depends what I was looking for. But if I met a girl and there was a bunch of, it's like when I talked to her and she gave me a bunch of, let's call it red flags, I wasn't interested in that. I was interested in moving on. So it's the same thing with an ATM. When you find a business, if it doesn't fit you got to know what your breaking points are. Are you like some people put an ATM in without an agreement? I won't. So if that's a deal breaker, then for them, they say, well, I'm not signing an agreement, then I'm fine. I'm not going to put it in. But some people will. You have to know where your where your uh, where your thresholds are for walking away.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love this. I ha, is this business a good business who's someone who's introverted? Is this a good business for someone to get into who's not a networker, who's not a people person, who's not I gotta shake every hand in the room. Everybody gotta know my name. I feel like um people often get sucked into, well, in order for me to be successful, I have to be there knocking on doors, knocking on businesses all the time. Is that the case? Is this business good for someone who may be introverted or not really a good networker? Do you find?
All right. So we probably, um, let's say we put out, okay, so there's 365 days of the year, right? We
Right.
put out about 20 to 25 ATMs. Let's go 15 to 25 ATMs a year, right? So that means I had to talk to, or somebody, I have people talking to people, but let's, what is it, 50 days of the year, or maybe 50 times. The rest of the time we're running the business. So as an introvert, you're setting up your business plan. You're talking to the bank. You're making sure that your pay, maybe not payroll, but all your systems are in place. You're developing a system. If you do the mentorship, I can tell you how to do that. But if you don't, you want to do it yourself. You're creating all the systems and processes. That's all introverted stuff. That's the nuts and bolts of the business. The sales, you I'm not going to lie, you have to get sales or the business won't succeed. But the rest of the stuff, it won't succeed without it. So you have to maybe Jekyll and Hyde it, or you have to have somebody who's going to help you get locations. Once I got the locations. I didn't have time to go out and get locations, so I created what I call mavens to go out and help me get locations. Guys who are already had what we call them right now is we call them affiliates, right? Affiliate marketers. That's what, without that big word, it was just somebody who would go out, and I call them, back in the day we call them bird dogs, is go out and say, hey Phil, this location needs an ATM. And they would give me the lead. It was a warm lead. I would go talk to the owner. They would sign a deal, and then I would give the guy a little something for the effort. And that's what I did. That's how I built the ATM business over and over and over again, because I couldn't talk to all these owners. Not that I didn't have the personality to do it. I just didn't have the time to do it.
Yeah.
So I created somebody, and I mean, tip for the podcast is we were in the bar and restaurant. That's where I was. So I knew every beer. There was 3 different kinds of beer. There was Budweiser, Miller Lite, and Old Style. At the time, we're from, I was in the Milwaukee area. So those are 3 guys. And then there was 2 liquor distributors, and so I knew all 5 of those guys, and I knew the chip guy. And there was a guy, Rugs. He took the rugs, he put them in the bars, and then they would pick them up once a month and then clean them and put brand new ones down. So I knew all 6 of those guys, and I would call them, and hey, I would chat them up. And when I would see them, and give them something a little at Christmas time, and they would always remember me. Hey, this guy's changing hands. This is over here. They're opening this spot. And I would have those guys on, so to speak, on my payroll, but not really. It was just lunch, and I would give them a little something if we closed the deal. So that's all we did. And I did that. That's what I did over and over and over again. It's create those people who help you grow your business. And I give them a little something they were already talking to the people anyways. So it didn't matter.
I think it was just automatic, right?
Yeah.
You were just doing your job, and somebody knew of you, and
Yeah.
someone a bar owner knows another bar owner,
Right.
right? A business owner knows a similar business who need. That's how I got two nail salons.
Right.
Right? It's literally I installed it. I did great customer service, and I'm an introvert as they come, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And then the sister is a Filipino mafia, right? It's a
Mhm.
Filipino. The sister has a
Yeah.
brother that's opening another location who's all cash.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Hey, do you go this far?" And I said, "I will."
Yes.
Right? And I did. And that referral, it was automatic. It was an automatic, just people just talking to people and providing good customer service. Then do you sell already set up, established ATMs installed, Wi-Fi set, wireless setup? Do you sell locations, Mr. Phil?
Like, so I sell the ATMs. Do we sell the location with
Yes,
that?
already you have a location. It's in my market. I want to just buy the location from you for a price.
All right. So we worked with a locator, which a locator. So what I would call a maven or a finder is a guy who I teach how to find me locations. A locator is somebody who cold calls a bunch of locations and they will find you a location. So I um, I have contracted with the guy to go out and find locations. And let's say if you were looking for a location, you would say, "Hey, I'm looking for a location." You would give me zip codes, and then I would have the guy go in and call businesses in that area to try to find you a location. Then once they did that, what I would do is I would have you go in, cut the deal with the owner, and then we would program the ATM and then we'd ship it to you, and then you would install it. That's how we have done that to help grow people's businesses.
Absolutely. How much should I have prepared for a service like that, or to take your course? How much should I
So,
bring to the table ready in cash to get started in this business?
so you need all in. You need about $3,500 to do that. So you need, let's call it 2,500 for the ATM, and let's call it 2,500. Then you need about three, depending on the shipping and programming. You're looking at about 3 grand, and then the course is about $500.
Absolutely. Do you ever encourage anyone to borrow money to get into the ATM business?
Well, that's how I got started. So yeah,
You
so,
did. You-
yeah. I mean, you can't. I mean, yeah. So look,
You borrowed money, really?
yeah, you got. I mean, I'm not financially wealthy here. I had yeah. Everything you have to start somewhere, and so yes, I started. I borrowed a little money from friends and family, and then I paid the money back. And believe it or not, the bank of friends and family does real well when you pay back. It's it's the silliest thing. It's like a line of credit. You borrow from friends and family, you pay it back, and they say, "Well, when are you going to pay me back?" And let's say you said, "Oh, I'm going to pay back in 3 months." If you pay them back in 2, and you give them a little extra, say thank you for the effort, then you go back to friends and family, and they say, "Can I borrow a little bit more?" And they say, okay, but your street credit's good, and you pay them back early, and you give them a little bit more, and then guess what? Your street credit goes up. You got more access to cash, and you do it over and over and over and over again. The only time it doesn't work if you welch on a deal, then you're cut off. So you don't do that, and so that's how I built it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Can you share a story, Mr. Phil, where where an ATM placement didn't go as planned, and what did you learn from it? Can you share some sage wisdom for the audience here, where you learned from a bad mistake? You've been sharing nuggets all episode, but can you share any wisdom or nuggets here?
So yeah, I mean, I had a guy, and it was phenomenal. I got a phenomenal tattoo place. The guy, I mean, he is amazing. He's an amazing artist, and he's got. We're in Chicago. I'm close to the naval base. It's Great Lakes Naval Base. So all the kids come in and they do their boot camp, and then when they're done with their 8 weeks, I don't know, they get some artwork done. Okay, so he's close. He's got a lot of this, and it's a great location. Now he's got a buddy and says he's got a tattoo place and he wants an ATM. So I said, okay, let's let's put it in there. So we put it in there, friends of this guy. And what happened is, this is one of the stories, is we put it in, and then I noticed that it's by appointment only. So the only time you can get in there is appointment only, and it's just him, and he's got his girl doing, they're, I think she was an artist too, but she did most of the taking the money in that. And I think when I got backed up, she did a little artist too. So it's like an artist and a half. The other guys got 25 artists. This was one. So I had to go to the guy after a while, and I'm like, hey, how do I tell me about your business more? Because I thought you were going to have more artists. You said you're going to have more artists. You're going to expand your business. He's like, yeah, I had a couple guys coming in. They went somewhere else. It wasn't what I said. I thought we were trying to find somebody, and we left it in there for 6 months, and it never amounted. I said, look, man, I said, you're a great guy. I hear nothing but good things from your studio here, but we got to pull our ATM. We're just not doing any volume. And he goes, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
And so and I was worried because the guy who's just killing it they're friends, and I'm like, oh, how's this going to work? But you know what? I had to make that decision, and we just pulled it.
Are you still friends with the good guy?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Mr. Phil.
At the end of the day, I just want to say, at the end of the day is, you know what? Everybody's a business person, and they understand if it's not working out.
They're real human beings. They're real people. Mr. Webb, this has been a phenomenal conversation. How can people connect with you? How can people find you? How can people learn more about what you're doing and getting started in 2025 in the ATM business?
All right. So we have a YouTube channel, and I'll put it. It's Philip Webb ATM on YouTube. So you can just go to YouTube. You can learn more about the ATM business. I have over 1,000 videos. I've been in the space for 25 years, but I've been on YouTube for almost 6 years now. So you can go in there and learn. I put another link in there, ATM checklist in there. You can check that. It'll tell you about the 5 things you need to know to start your profitable ATM business. And then there is, if you want to also have a phone call with me to explain the ATM business, there's a link there for you to do that. We offer a course that'll teach you everything from A to Z for $500 to start your ATM business too. That's
it. Absolutely. That's a steal, y'all. That's a steal. You're not 25 years plus of experience, knowledge, charisma, wisdom, and expertise. Everything from beginning A to Z. And speaking of A to Z, he also has the book.
I have a book. Yes. So I just want to share this little story here with you before we leave. So a friend said, Phil, you wrote a book? And I said, yes. But here's the reason why I wrote the book, is because I wanted to show I got 2 girls. I wanted to show it could be done. And then I thought if I could write a book, it took me a year to write this book, believe it or not. But I wanted to show them that it could be done. And I figured if it could be done, that they would decide maybe they could do it too. So that's why I wrote the book. Initially is for them to show that it could be done. And then, it turned out to help some more people, which is good. That was like a cherry on top. But the reason I did it is so I could show my girls that it could be done.
Absolutely. So your girls read the book. Did they, was it easy enough? Because that's how you know if it works, right? If a child can learn it, read it, understand it. Did it work? Did they get the message? Did they learn?
Yes. But they didn't start an ATM business. But they're in. I got 2 girls. One's in college. The other one's going to college. So they're still on their education process.
That's a win. That's still a win. Yeah. Knowledge is power, y'all. Connect. Like we said, this has been an incredible conversation. This has been an incredible episode. Connect. This man is absolutely changing the game, and he's helping people change their lives. The ATM business is changing lives still in 2025, and he's here to give back and serve. And so that's why we had to have him back. I'm so glad we had him back on the show. This is phenomenal. Sir, Mr. Webb, I want to say this to you personally. Never give up. We need you. You.
Thank you, Mr. Norman. You know what? It's been a pleasure being on your podcast again. I've been following your career. It's amazing. And we're going to keep on following it. And I wish you much success. And thank you, everybody, for listening to me talk today.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all. All right, y'all. We are out of time. We got to let this incredible man go. He is out of time. We got we got to change some things. We got to let him go. He has many more lives to change, many more people to impact. But like we end every show, take care of your friends, take care of your family, and always, always take care of business. This is Marcus, your favorite gentleman, and the incredible Mr. Philip Webb. Signing off. Love you guys. Bye.
Bye.